بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء وخاتم المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا واللعنة الدائمة الباقية على أعدائهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد, brothers and sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. We started the Tafsir program last night, and as I had announced that inshallah we'll be looking at Surah at-Talaq, Surah number 65 of the Quran. As I had mentioned last night, don't worry about it. The name of the surah is kind of dangerous, but it is part of the human life and the society and the problems that we see as far as the family relations are concerned. So Quran, in general, Islam doesn't shy away from dealing with problems. When there is a problem in human society, in human nature, challenges that people have, Islam talks about it. It's not a religion which says that, you just worship God and the rest of your life, you conduct yourself according to the, whatever your government, for example, says. Especially when it comes to the issues of marriage, divorce, and inheritance, even the career and the profession that we choose. Islam has a very clear, guidelines for us. Sometimes the guidelines are very, elaborate. Sometimes they are very just general, teachings. Let me share with you one before I go to the theme back. When we have these non-Muslim high school students from grade 11 and 12 who come to visit our center in Jaffrey Community Center, alhamdulillah, for many years, during the academic year, we get about 150 to 200 visits in a year. These are grade 11, grade 12, students who come in. And the presentation that I have, where I talk about Islam as a way of life, one of the examples I give them is that you might look at the dietary rules of Islam. And one of the things that they learn is that one of the things which is forbidden in Islam is intoxicating drinks. And in Islam, it is not only something which is, discouraged. It is actually absolutely and totally forbidden. We don't have, moderate drinking trend. No. There is no drinking at all. No beer and wine in the menu or diet of a Muslim. Although it's just a dietary rule that we have. And of course, I use the example of the billboard signs on the highways where it says, don't drink and drive. I say, ours is more simpler. Don't drink at all. You don't have to worry about whether you should drive after there or not. And so, although it is just a simple rule about, diet in Islam, but just to show how Islam, is with us in whatever we do, you think of a Muslim accountant looking for a job. There might be an opening in a beer company. And this person is a practicing Muslim, is not going to drink. Probably as an accountant, he never even would stand in the production line or even look at the product. He deals with the numbers in the books. But even then, that Muslim accountant cannot accept that job because his salary will come from proceeds of an item which is totally forbidden in our faith. So a very simple rule on a dietary, area of life has implication in the choices that we make about our own career and profession. And so Islam, doesn't shy away from issues that people will face in their day-to-day life. And one of the issues, besides marriage, we also have the issue of talaq. Now, last night I emphasized that before going to this surah at-Talaq, let us a little bit talk about marriage. Because if you look at the word talaq and the word aqd, these are two opposites. Aqd means tying two things, and talaq means untying the knot. And this is basically in the context of the marriage. Aqd means tying the knot between the two couple in marriage, and talaq is when you untie it. The word talaq, or for example, mutlaq. In fiqh we say that there is mixed water and then there is abe muzaf and then you have abe mutlaq. Mutlaq, talaq, itlaq is all from the same root. The water is known as mutlaq when it is by itself. Nothing is mixed with it. And so talaq basically now, there is no tying of the two couples. And this is where we see that these two phenomena, of course, are linked to one another. While aqd is the highly recommended deed in Islam, talaq is considered to be the most disliked permission in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore last night I emphasized based on this ayat that we recite from Surah Nur about marriage, that when it comes to the issue of aqd and marriage and nikah, this is not only something highly recommended for individuals to get married, but it's also emphasized in Quran and the Sunnah of the Masumeen about becoming matchmakers. And I was just emphasizing on this point that parents are the first, it's primarily their role there. Then you have the relatives, then the friends and the community at large. They can always devise ways of dealing with this issue, but primarily this is how it works. And let me just add one more thing in addition to what I said last night. Alhamdulillah, in our community we have some individuals who in their own personal capacity do this, especially the ladies. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless them. Remember the hadith that I quoted last night, that there are three people who will be under the shadow of the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of Qiyamah. And the first in that list is the person who brings two believers into the fold of marriage. And so it is very much something very much praised. And I would urge, especially those who are in the age of I would say junior, seniors. They're still active. They don't depend on others. This is maybe, sadaqah jariyah for you. Work on that issue. Look at the families around that and see if you can help them in that process. But let me say one thing. When we talk about the issue of matchmaking and getting involved in bringing two individuals for marriage, there is sometimes a hesitation. And the hesitation is because that if it doesn't work, they will come and blame the person. And this is where you have to realize the matchmaker can just do whatever is humanly possible for them. They will look at a boy and a girl and, get details about them, look at their profile, and they will say, okay, they seem to be matching one another. And so they, make them, see one another or contact or talk about the issues. Then it is up to them. This person in between now has nothing to do with the decision. It is for the families on both sides and the boy and a girl to make the final decision. If it works, alhamdulillah, thank that person. If it doesn't work later on, don't go and blame that person. Can you have let me give you an example actually. There was a family who had come to me at my home many years ago. It was a situation where there was no reconciliation, and it was actually a meeting for talaq. And when we went through it, this fellow, the husband, turns to me and he says, "Maulana, lekin shaadi ke liye istikhara aap hi nahi dekha tha." I don't remember. People call me for istikhara every day. I wouldn't remember who called me. And the husband says, you were the one who saw the istikhara for my marriage and it came out good. But if I see istikhara for your marriage, it doesn't mean I'm giving you, a 10 years warranty with that. I'm just telling you that according to the istikhara, it is good. But to make that marriage work and be successful, you have to work on it. Maybe the match is good, but it will not survive if both of you do not work on it. We can't have a better example than Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Can we have a matchmaker better than him? No. He decided in Medina, a girl from his family, his own cousin, Zainab bint Jahaj, the cousin, and Zayd bin Harisa, who was kind of, had become like a son to Rasulullah. And Rasulullah decided to get them married. So you can't have a better matchmaker than Rasulullah. But you read the whole story in the Quran. It didn't last. It ended up in talaq. Their marriage, their nikah, and their talaq has been mentioned in the Quran. Actually, Zayd is the only person mentioned from the Sahaba in the Quran by name. And so, if Rasulullah is the matchmaker and didn't work, you can't blame him. And this is where we have to realize that when I talk about, getting involved in that, sometimes there is a hesitation. They say, we don't want to be held responsible for it. No, you are not responsible for it. You are just doing the good deed. Bring them together. Decision is theirs. Whether it's going to survive or not, it is their total responsibility. Nothing to do with the, matchmaking group or the individual. Salawat padne para. And so we have aqd on one side, the marriage, and talaq on the other side. And as we said last night, both are completely opposites. We have a hadith here from Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. Where he says, ما من شيء أحب إلى الله عز وجل من بيت يعمر في الإسلام بالنكاح. Which means that there is nothing more beloved in the eyes of Almighty God than a house which is built in Islam through marriage. Nothing is more ahab, more beloved than in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The opposite of this, وَمَا مِن شَيْءٍ أَبْغَضُ إِلَى اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ. There is nothing more disliked or hated, you can even use that word. Not only disliked, but hated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. مِن بَيْتٍ يُخْرَبُ فِي الْإِسْلَامِ بِالْفُرْقَةِ. Then a house in Islam among the Muslims which is being destroyed because of divorce. And so when we look at this process, this is where we have to realize that, marriage is considered to be the most beloved thing in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whereas talaq is the most, abghad, the most hated or disliked phenomenon in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One more hadith on this issue from Amir al-Mu'minin Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wa salam. Where he's quoting Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, where he says, تزوجوا, marry, ولا تطلقوا, and don't do talaq. فإن الطلاق يحتز منه العرش. Because when talaq happens, the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shakes or trembles. And this is where we see the abhorrence that Islam has towards divorce. But Islam has still allowed it. And the question comes, why? Why was talaq not made haram? Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks at, human nature. Because sometimes the disagreements and discord between the family, between the couple would be such that it becomes unbearable. So you have only two options. Either you say, no, you must live here in this relationship, and this is your Jahannam in this dunya. Or the other is, just let them go. Islam looks at the reality and it says, well, if it reaches to a point after all attempts of reconciliation, things have not worked, let them go. This is where Islam basically has allowed divorce as the last choice. But the beauty is that Islam has not made divorce that easy either. If you compare that, and we don't have that much time to go into comparative view here. If you look at Christianity, for example, Christianity doesn't believe in the concept of divorce. In Judaism, it is there. In the Gospel of Matthew, Isa ibn Maryam is supposed to have said that it has been said, whoever shall put away his wife, let him give her a writing of divorce. This is referring to the Jewish laws. That it has been said to you that if a person wants to separate from his wife, he should give it in a written form to her. But I say unto you, this is now Isa saying to his own followers, that whoever shall put away his wife, saving for the cause of fornication, causes her to commit adultery. And whoever shall marry her, that is the divorced woman, that person has committed adultery. So divorce is not allowed according to the Christian understanding. And remarrying, for example, marrying a divorcee woman is considered to be committing adultery. And this is where we see that, especially the Catholic Church is more strong on this issue. But Islam doesn't look at things in that way. Islam looks at the nature and the fitrat of human being. If the marriage is not going to work, it's not going to work. And so Islam allows that. And the Catholic Church actually was basically forced to come up with a very ingenious ijtihad, if I might call it. And they say that if they are a Catholic couple who realize that they cannot, stay together anymore, they should apply for divorce, and the church will write a decree that their marriage is null and void from day one. So, for example, if they are married for 10 years, how can you say this is null and void from day one? This is where they, come up with their understanding. If you look at even the separation of Anglican Church from Catholic Church, King Edward VIII, and the whole story about his attempt to marry a divorcee woman, and the Pope refused. And so he ended up, separating the whole church, and he became the head of the church and changed the rules. So the whole separation of Anglican Church from the Roman Catholic Church was based on this issue of, whether you are allowed to marry a divorcee or not. So these are real issues, and Islam doesn't shy away from it, and it talks about it. And it says, it is allowed in Islam, but it is considered to be the last resort. When I say that Islam has made divorce not that easy, it has allowed it, compared to aqd. Look at the comparison here I made on the chart. You have aqd on one side and talaq on the other side. For example, the requirement of witnesses. In the Shia fiqh, when the marriage takes place, there is no requirement for witnesses. It is not necessary. It is recommended. Although in Canadian laws, you need the witnesses for registration of the marriage. In the Shia fiqh, it is highly recommended. In Sunni fiqh, it is mandatory. But in Shia fiqh, if you don't have witnesses, you don't have witnesses. Islam, Shia fiqh says, if you want to get married, no barriers, go ahead. But for the sake of, the community to know about it, this is where the recommendation for having witnesses has been brought in. But when it comes to talaq, Shia fiqh says very clearly that you cannot divorce. No talaq would be valid without having two, adil. And that's also a very difficult condition there, not just anyone. You need to have two adil men witnesses for recitation of the talaq. So you see that, in the Shia fiqh, talaq is not that easy. Now this is unlike the Sunni perspective. You don't need talaq. You don't need witnesses. You can just do it alone. Very different from the Shia perspective, and we will look at the ayat in Surah Talaq later on, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually emphasizes the point of witnesses when you do the talaq. So we are actually in line with the teaching of the Quran. Another example, the status of the wife as far as taharat is concerned. In aqd there is no issues. In whatever state a person would be, the nikah can be recited, it's valid. But when it comes to the issue of talaq, there are certain conditions which have to be met in Shia fiqh. Again, this is not in the Sunni fiqh, this is in Shia fiqh, that a woman has to be in the state of purity from the cycle, and there are other also similar conditions attached to it. When it comes to the issue of seriousness, of course, this is required in nikah also. You have to be, you have to have the intention and very clear, firm, intent to do the nikah, as well as when it comes to the issue of talaq. Unlike the Sunni fiqh, whether you intend or not, if a person was drunk, didn't know what he was doing, and if he says talaq, 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 it is done. You see, but in the Shia fiqh, there are all barriers there that before you do this, you have to be very serious about it. You remember there was a story in Pakistan where in one of the drama series there, I'm told that there were a husband and wife in the drama who was actually husband and wife in the real life also. And there was a situation of talaq between them in the drama. And the husband gives her 3 talaq, and the mufti said, oh, ho gaya. It's done. In our fiqh, that is not valid. Even if it says, 6 times and 9 times or 600 times, it is not even a single talaq because it was not intended. There was no seriousness in uttering those words. Another difference we see is that when the nikah is recited, the impact, it becomes, effective immediately. When ankahtu and qabultu is mentioned, that's it. They are not tied. But when it comes to the issue of talaq, even when the talaq is recited, it is not immediately effective until the 3 months or 3 cycles, waiting period. That's a grace period where Islam says you can still reconsider the situation. And so this is where we see that, while aqd and marriage, which is considered to be the most beloved thing in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is made very easy, whereas talaq, which is the most disliked, it is allowed because of certain situations, but it has been made very, strict and difficult. Salawat pढ़ने के बाद. So let us go to the Surah Talaq, Surah number 65. This is the first ayat where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins by saying, Ya ayyuhan nabi, idha talaqtum an-nisa fatalliquhunna li'iddatihinna. O Prophet, when you divorce women, divorce them at their iddah time. Now some of the words here and terminologies need some explanation. We'll go through it very simply, and this is not the complete first ayat. I've just taken first part of it. Inshallah, we'll continue tomorrow. So look at the 3 parts that we have. Number 1, it is addressed to the Prophet directly. Ya ayyuhan nabi. Why? For example, namaz, it says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu aqimus salat. Here it could have been same, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu iza talaqtum an-nisa fatallaqihunna li'iddatihinna. But no, it is addressed, directly to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. There is a reason for it, and the reason is very simple. He is the head of the community. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to mention some of the important issues, He actually addresses the head of the community. It's just like, in Arabic, Farsi, Urdu also, and probably in Gujarati also, you have these issues. Sometimes you say it to someone, but the message is for someone else. बहुत कॉमन है ना, बेटी को डांटती है लेकिन मैसेज जो है बहू के लिए है, या शौहर को डांट रही है लेकिन मैसेज हमसाये वाले के लिए है. चलो ज़रा इक्वल कर लिया जाए ना, वो सिर्फ बेटियों की बात क्यों हो. तो ये it is very common, that you might address someone, but the message is not for that person, it is for somebody else. So here also there is the same issue. Rasulullah is being addressed directly just to show that this is a very important issue. And so you Muslims have to be careful about it. إِذَا طَلَّقْتُمُ النِّسَاءَ, when you divorce women, then do it in this way. Basically, you need to add a word there. When you intend to divorce the woman, this is how you should do it. If you go, for example, it says, وَإِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ فَاغْسُلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ. Or you who believe, when you stand up for prayers, then do wuzu. If you go literally with it, it means when you stand up on the musalla for doing namaz, then go and do wuzu. No, it means when you intend to stand up for namaz, first go and do wuzu. So here also we are being told that, Muslims, if you intend to divorce the woman, then this is how you should do. Divorce them at their iddah time. Now, divorce should be done at the time which is considered as the beginning of their term of iddah. The main point here is that this is the time of the wife's tuhur. Tuhur means purity. The way we say when they are pak. And the reason why this has been emphasized in that way is because, this is the first condition. If you remember when we compared aqd with talaq. In nikah, there is no issue. Status of the man and woman doesn't matter. In whatever state they are, the nikah would be valid. When it comes to talaq, there is issue of purity as far as the wife is concerned. And so that's the main first condition being expressed in this ayat, that the talaq should be done at the time of iddah. And iddah starts during the purity from the last cycle, before divorce, and in which no relations have taken place. By saying at their iddah, فَطَلِّقُهُنَّ لِعِدَّتِهِنَّ. Basically, talaq is being linked with the time when the wife is free from her cycle and also free from any relationships with him. And so these are two main conditions for the validity of talaq. Otherwise, the talaq would not be valid. They will have to wait. This is again, one more hurdle being put by those who want to do talaq. Islam says, okay, think about it. Maybe you get 1 more month, to reconsider your decision. Now, one of the cases relevant to this ayat, according to the Mufassirin from Shia and Sunni, it was actually Abdullah bin Umar who divorced his wife when she was not in her tuhur. And when the Prophet came to know about it, he actually called him and says, your wife is still your wife. Your talaq is null and void because you did not fulfill this condition. And this is where we see that, when we talk about the laws of talaq in Islam, it is permissible, but it becomes kind of, not that easy. So a person has to think about it again and again before they make their decision. Salawat padhne ek baar aur. Okay, the last sentence will continue tomorrow because it needs a longer discussion, and it's actually more linked to the sentence which comes after that. So we'll continue with that. The remaining time, let me just refresh your memory about some of the basic rulings about fasting. Number one, about, I get this question every year. And that is the issue of, going for blood test. While he was fasting, Yasin goes for blood test. Is his fast valid? You have four options. Is it A or is it C? Huh? Okay, you remember that from last year. That's good. Okay. This is just to refresh your memory. Okay, second one, Jafar is asthma and needs to take puffer from time to time. Will use of puffer break his fast? Huh? See? Well, those of you who said B are right, but even C could be a right answer. The vapors actually go to the respiratory tract and not to the food passage. And so it doesn't make the rosa batil. And so that's the main thing. So that shouldn't be a problem as far as fasting is concerned for those who use puffer during the fasting. Smoking is one of the muftirat. It's in the list of 10 things where it's haram, which makes the fasting batil. And even after Ramadan, it's better you quit that. It's good for your health. Number 3, Shireen uses nasal drops or eye drops in the state of fasting. Is it valid or qaza or kafara or not to worry? Huh? It is valid unless, especially when it comes to the nasal drops, unless you can feel it in your throat. Then you have to do qaza. There is no kafara for it. So it's kind of a yes and no situation. Are you allowed to use toothpaste while brushing instead of fasting? There's a whole story about Prophet Musa alayhi salam going to Tur. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked him to come to receive the Torah. And he was asked to fast. He fasted for 30 days. And the story goes on that on the last day he brushed. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I like the breath or the smell of a person who is fasting. So you stay here and fast for 10 more days. That's how, from 30 it became 40. Of course, that was Allah's way of testing Bani Israel. He had promised them, I'll come back after 30 days. And in those 10 days, because he didn't show up, maybe they have given him 2-3 days, maybe he's lost in the mountain or something. But after that, when he didn't come back, and they didn't know what happened, they changed themselves from, muwahideen to mushrikeen. They were worshippers of one God and they started worshipping a a calf. And that was actually the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to keep Musa back. And so we sometimes are told that, don't brush. Allah loves the smell of those who are fasting. But that was Allah, not your fellow workers. That is why, when we look at this issue, no, it is permissible. There is no problem in using toothpaste. You just have to make sure it doesn't go down. And so no issue of gargling or using, a mouthwash in that way. Okay. In the state of fasting, Zayd backbites a mu'min. What is the state of his fasting? Huh? Ghibat is one of those haram things that Allah in Quran says, would you like to eat the flesh of your dead brother? If you do it in fasting, what happens then? Is it invalid or losing extra sawab, or he has to do qaza or pay kafara? Huh? Yeah, you look at the unusual answer, and that's B. So your roza would still be okay. Your fasting would still be valid, but you lose the extra, reward for fasting, because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "As-sa'imu fi ibadah wa in kana ala firashihi." A person who is fasting, he is in the state of ibadat and worshipping Allah, even if he is sleeping on his bed. So even when you go to rest, when you are fasting, Allah considers that to be ibadat. Even your process of breathing in and out, which you don't do consciously, it is part of your system, that is considered as tasbih. But the Prophet says that, yes, this is all there, مَا لَمْ يَقْتَبْ مُسْلِمًا, provided you do not do the ghibat of a Muslim. As soon as you do the ghibat of a Muslim, your fast is still valid. You don't have to do qaza or pay kafara, but you lose that extra reward that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has reserved for you when you are fasting. And this actually is a way of understanding that fasting is not only, refraining from food and drink and other activities. It actually has more to do with refining ourselves, improving our spirituality. And that is why you will see in the list of 10 things which are forbidden, about 9 of them are related to food and drink or, sexual activities. But there is one item at the end which is very much, odd in that list. And it says, Al-Kidhb ala Allah wal Rasul wal A'immah. If you in the state of fasting ascribe a statement to Allah and Rasul and the Imam just by making it by yourself without any verification from Quran or Hadith, then your roza, your fasting becomes batil. And the question is this only haram when you are fasting? Can you just ascribe a statement to Allah after iftar? It's still haram. What about after the month of Ramadan? It's still haram. It's haram all the time. But in month of in the fasting, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you do it knowingly, and if you say, oh, qala sadiq, this and that, and you haven't read it anywhere, just, Hadith Abu Huraira, then your roza becomes batil there. And this is where we have to realize that we have been given a message there. That one mas'ala in the list of muftirat is actually a window into the spiritual dimension of fasting. That is not only fasting from food and drink, According to our sixth Imam, he says, your eyes should fast, your ears should fast, your tongue should fast, your hand should fast. What does it mean? It means that, you should be conscious of Allah's presence in your life and don't do anything which is going to displease Him. And that is where your level of, fasting will go to the higher level, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will include you among those, as the Prophet says, min ahli karamatillah. You will be included in the list of the people who have the nobility and honor and respect in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is something we have to keep in mind, that it's not only an exercise to maybe lose few pounds at the end of the month. That's just a side benefit. The actual purpose is actually to reform ourselves from inside. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase our tawfiqat and give us the ability to fulfill this duty in the month of Ramadan in the best way, and always keep us among the followers of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad salawatullah alayhi ajma'een.